Victoria Sterling clutched her portfolio tighter as she walked through the marble halls of the Metropolitan Gallery. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, a stark contrast to the designer heels clicking around her. At 26, she had spent 3 years trying to make it as an artist in New York City, living on instant noodles and hope. Tonight was different. Tonight, her painting Midnight Dreams hung among the works of established artists at the annual charity exhibition. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and terror. This could be her big break, the moment that changed everything. The mistake that changed everything. Victoria spotted the champagne table and decided to calm her nerves. As she reached for a glass, her elbow bumped into someone behind her. Crystal flute slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor in a shower of sparkling fragments. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," Victoria gasped. Spinning around to face her victim, she found herself staring into the most intense blue eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and a jawline that belonged on magazine covers. His expensive black suit probably cost more than her rent for 6 months. "It's perfectly fine," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. "Accidents happen." Something about his calm response made Victoria even more flustered. She knelt down, frantically trying to pick up the glass pieces with her bare hands. "Please don't," the stranger said, gently catching her wrist. "You'll cut yourself." The moment his fingers touched her skin, Victoria felt an electric shock run up her arm. She looked up, meeting his gaze again, and saw something flicker in those blue depths. The misunderstanding, Sebastian Kane, a woman's voice called out sharply from across the room. "There you are." Victoria watched as a stunning blonde woman in a silver dress approached them. Her smile was perfect, but her eyes were cold as winter. "Rebecca," the man replied, his tone noticeably cooler. "I was just helping this young lady with an accident." Rebecca's gaze swept over Victoria dismissively. "How charitable of you, brother!" "But the Patterson family is waiting to discuss the merger." "Brother." So this was Sebastian Kane, the tech billionaire, whose face graced the covers of business magazines. Victoria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Of course, she would literally crash into one of the richest men in America. "Actually," Sebastian said, surprising everyone, including himself. "I was just discussing Victoria's artwork with her." Victoria's eyes widened. He didn't even know her name, yet he was claiming to know her work. "Oh, really?" Rebecca's smile sharpened. "And which piece is yours, dear?" Victoria's mouth went dry. She pointed toward the far wall where her painting hung. "Midnight Dreams," she managed. Sebastian's eyes followed her gesture, landing on a canvas that depicted a woman standing at a window, looking out at a city that sparkled with both hope and loneliness. The technique was raw, but powerful, the emotions almost leaping off the canvas. "It's extraordinary," Sebastian said quietly, and Victoria could tell he meant it. The unexpected invitation for the next hour. Sebastian stayed by Victoria's side, asking thoughtful questions about her art and her process. He seemed genuinely interested, unlike most wealthy collectors who saw art as just another investment. "You have incredible talent," Sebastian told her as the evening wound down. "But you're struggling financially, aren't you?" Victoria's cheeks reddened. "Is it that obvious? Your shoes?" he said gently. "They're well cared for but old. Your dress is beautiful but altered to fit you. You're putting every penny into your art instead of yourself." The observation should have been insulting, but something in his tone made it feel like understanding rather than judgment. "I have a proposition," Sebastian continued. "My company is renovating our headquarters. We need original artwork for the executive floors. Would you be interested in a commission?" Victoria's heart stopped. Commission from Kane Industries would pay her rent for months, maybe even a year. Yes," she breathed. "I would be very interested." Sebastian pulled out his phone and handed it to her. "Put in your number. I'll have my assistant call you tomorrow with the details." As Victoria typed in her information, she felt Rebecca's eyes boring into her. When she looked up, Sebastian's sister was watching with an expression that made Victoria's skin crawl. The phone call that changed everything the next morning. Victoria woke to her phone ringing. She expected Sebastian's assistant, but his own voice filled her ear. "Good morning, Victoria. I hope I'm not calling too early." "No, not at all," Victoria said, not a league grateful she was still in bed where he couldn't see her messy hair and oversized t-shirt. "I've been thinking about our conversation last night," Sebastian continued. The commission is real, but I have another proposition. One that might sound completely insane. Victoria sat up straighter. I'm listening. I need a girlfriend. The words hung in the air between them. Victoria was certain she had misheard. I'm sorry, what? Sebastian's laugh was rueful. I told you it would sound insane. Let me explain. My family's company is built on traditional values, family stability. The board has been pressuring me to settle down, get married, start producing heirs. They think my bachelor lifestyle makes me unreliable. But you could date anyone, Victoria protested. There must be hundreds of women who would love to be. With you? Women who want my money? Yes, Sebastian said bitterly. But I need someone real. Someone who won't fall in love with my bank account. Someone who can hold her own in my world but isn't corrupted by it. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. What exactly are you asking me to do? Pretend to be my girlfriend. Attend events. Meet my family. Convince everyone that Sebastian Kane is finally settling down with a nice girl. In return, I'll pay you $50,000 and guarantee you 3 major commissions. $50,000. It was more money than Victoria had ever seen at once. It would pay off her student loans, cover her rent for 2 years, buy her the art supplies she desperately needed. How long? She asked. 6 months. Maybe less, if the board stops pressuring me. Victoria closed her eyes. It was crazy. Completely insane. But she was tired of eating ramen noodles and worrying about eviction notices. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. The first date 3 days later, Victoria stood in front of her tiny mirror, trying to make her second-hand dress look worthy of a 5-star restaurant. Sebastian had insisted on taking her somewhere his family might see them to start building their story. When she opened her apartment door, Victoria's breath caught. Sebastian stood in the narrow hallway wearing a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. But what struck her most was the bouquet of white lilies in his hands. You didn't have to, she said, accepting the flowers. Yes, I did, Sebastian replied. If we're going to sell this relationship, I need to act like a man who's falling in love. Something in his tone made Victoria look at him more carefully. For just a moment, she saw past the confident billionaire facade to something vulnerable underneath, the restaurant and the rules. Bernardine was the kind of restaurant Victoria had only read about in magazines. The Mater D treated Sebastian like royalty, leading them to a private table with a view of the city's skyline. We need to establish some ground rules, Sebastian said once they were seated. Victoria nodded, trying not to gawk at the menu prices. First, in public, we're completely devoted to each other. Holding hands, casual touches, the way real couples behave, right? Second, we keep our private lives separate. This is business, not personal. Third, we create a believable backstory about how we met and fell in love. Okay, Victoria agreed. How did we meet? Sebastian considered this. The gallery opening. You were admiring a painting. I struck up a conversation about art. We discovered we both believe in following our passions regardless of what others think. Practical. That's actually close to the truth, Victoria observed. The best lies usually are, Sebastian replied. But his smile seemed a bit forced. The first test as, if summoned by their conversation, Rebecca Kane appeared at their table. She was even more stunning than Victoria remembered, and her smile was sharp as a blade. Sebastian, what a delightful surprise, Rebecca said, though her tone suggested it wasn't delightful at all. And Victoria, isn't it? How lovely to see you again. Rebecca, Sebastian said coolly. What brings you here tonight? I was having dinner with the Hendersons. They mentioned seeing you with a young woman, and I simply had to come say hello. Rebecca's eyes never left Victoria's face. Tell me. Dear, what do your parents think of your relationship with my brother? Victoria felt her stomach clench. This was exactly the kind of question she had dreaded. They're very happy for us, she said carefully. How wonderful. And what do they do? Lie came easier than Victoria expected. My father is a professor, and my mother runs a small bookstore, charming, Rebecca said. But her smile was predatory. Well, I won't keep you from your romantic evening. Sebastian, don't forget about Sunday dinner. Mother is so looking forward to meeting Victoria. After Rebecca left, Victoria slumped in her chair. Did I pass the test? With flying colors, Sebastian assured her. But she's going to investigate everything you just told her. Victoria's heart sank. My parents are dead, Sebastian. They died in a car crash when I was 22. Sebastian reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture was meant to maintain their cover, but Victoria felt that same electric shock from their first meeting. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "We'll figure out the details later. For now, just focus on getting through dinner." The moment everything changed, the evening progressed, Victoria found herself genuinely enjoying Sebastian's company. He was intelligent, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth, despite his wealth. He asked thoughtful questions about her art and seemed genuinely interested in her answers. "Why did you become an artist?" Sebastian asked over dessert. Victoria considered her answer carefully. "Because it's the only time I feel completely myself. When I'm painting, I don't have to pretend to be anyone else." Something shifted in Sebastian's expression. "I envy that," he said quietly. "What do you mean? I've been pretending to be someone else for so long. I'm not sure I remember who I really am anymore." The vulnerability in his voice caught Victoria off guard. For a moment, she forgot this was all pretense and reached out to touch his hand. "Maybe that's something we can figure out together," she said softly. Sebastian's eyes met hers, and Victoria saw something there that made her heart race. This was supposed to be fake, but the connection between them felt achingly real. The kiss that sealed their fate as Sebastian walked Victoria to her building. She tried to process everything that had happened. The evening had felt less like a business arrangement and more like an actual first date. "Thank you," Sebastian said as they stopped outside her door. "Tonight was nice," Victoria finished. "Really nice." They stood there for a moment, the city sounds fading around them. Victoria was acutely aware of how close Sebastian was standing, how the streetlight cast shadows across his face. "Victoria," he said softly, stepping closer. She looked up at him, her heart pounding. "Sebastian, we said this was just business." "I know what we said," he replied, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "But right now, I don't care about business." When Sebastian kissed her, Victoria felt her world tilt on its axis. It was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was asking permission. But when she kissed him back, something ignited between them. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates things," Victoria whispered. "Yes," Sebastian agreed. "It does." But neither of them stepped away. Whatever they had started at the gallery opening, whatever was growing between them, was bigger than their fake relationship agreement. As Victoria watched Sebastian drive away, she touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. She had agreed to pretend to love Sebastian Kane for 6 months. She was beginning to suspect that the pretending part was going to be the hardest thing she had ever done. Because somewhere between the champagne spill and the goodnight kiss, Victoria had started falling for the man behind the billionaire facade. And that was definitely not part of their business arrangement. The game had changed. But Victoria wasn't sure if either of them was ready to admit it yet. Victoria woke up with Sebastian's kiss still tingling on her lips and a knot of confusion in her stomach. What had started as a simple business arrangement was becoming something much more complicated, and she wasn't sure she was equipped to handle it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sebastian. "Good morning. I've arranged for a stylist to visit you at 2 p.m. We have the charity gala tonight. Last night was wonderful. S." Victoria stared at the message, her heart doing that fluttering thing again. The way he signed with just his initial felt intimate, somehow like a secret between them. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Victoria opened it to find a delivery man with an enormous bouquet of white roses and a small wrapped box. The card simply read, "For making everything feel real, Sebastian." Inside the box was a delicate silver bracelet with a small paintbrush charm. It was thoughtful, personal, and exactly the kind of gift a man in love would give to an artist. Victoria fastened the bracelet around her wrist, telling herself it was just part of maintaining their cover story. But the way it caught the morning light made her smile despite her confusion. The transformation at exactly 2 p.m. Victoria's small apartment was invaded by a team of professionals. The stylist, a sharp-eyed woman named Carmen, took one look at Victoria and smiled. "Mr. Kane has excellent taste," Carmen said, beginning to lay out options. "He said to make you look like yourself, just elevated." The dress Carmen selected was midnight blue silk that hugged Victoria's curves without being inappropriate. It was elegant, sophisticated, and made Victoria feel like she could belong in Sebastian's world. The key, Carmen explained, while the makeup artist worked, is to look like you could afford anything, but chose something classic instead of flashy. As Victoria looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked confident, polished, worthy of standing beside a billionaire, but underneath the silk and perfect makeup, she was still the same girl who worried about rent and ate cereal for dinner. The gala and the youth performance, the Children's Hospital Charity Gala, was being held at the Plaza Hotel. Victoria had walked past the building hundreds of times, but never imagined she would enter as a guest. Sebastian was waiting for her in the lobby, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo. When he saw her, his eyes widened with genuine appreciation. "You look absolutely stunning," he said, offering his arm. "Thank you," Victoria replied, acutely aware of the expensive bracelet on her wrist. "You clean up pretty well yourself." They entered the ballroom. Victoria felt hundreds of eyes turn their way. She could hear the whispers starting immediately. "Is that Sebastian Kane with someone new? Who is she?" "She's actually quite pretty." Sebastian seemed oblivious to the attention, guiding Victoria through the crowd with easy confidence. But Victoria could feel the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation, meeting the Kane family Sebastian darling. A silver-haired woman approached them, her smile warm but her eyes calculating. "You must introduce me to this lovely young woman." "Mother," Sebastian said, his posture tensing slightly. "This is Victoria Sterling." "Sorry, Victoria, my mother, Catherine." Kane. Catherine Kane was everything Victoria had expected from Sebastian's description, and more. She radiated the kind of quiet power that came from generations of wealth and influence. "Victoria," Catherine said, taking her hand. "How delightful to finally meet you. Sebastian has told us absolutely nothing about you, which is quite unusual for him." "I like to keep some things private," Sebastian replied smoothly. "Yes, but a mother does worry when her son suddenly appears with a beautiful woman, and no explanation." Catherine continued, her smile never wavering. "Tell me, dear, what do you do?" "I'm an artist," Victoria replied, grateful that this at least was true. "How interesting."
Hey.
"And where did you study?"
Victoria named her art school watching Catherine's.
Eyebrows rise slightly at the mention of a state university rather than an Ivy League institution. "How practical," Catherine said with the kind of smile that wasn't really a smile at all. Rebecca's interrogation, before Victoria could respond, Rebecca appeared at their mother's side, stunning in emerald green silk. "Oh, Victoria, how lovely to see." "You again," Rebecca said, air-kissing Victoria's cheeks. "I was just telling Mother about your charming parents, Professor and the bookstore owner." Victoria felt Sebastian's hand tighten on her waist. Ah. She had forgotten about the lie she had told at the restaurant. Yes, Victoria managed. "They're very supportive of my art." "I'm sure they are," Rebecca continued sweetly. "I was thinking we should all have dinner together sometime. I'd love to meet them." The trap was elegant and deadly. Victoria felt panic rising in her throat. "They're actually traveling at the moment," Sebastian interjected smoothly. "Research sabbatical in Europe." "How wonderful," Catherine said. "What? Does your father teach?" "Art history," Victoria said quickly, the lie coming easier this time. "Medieval European art. Fascinating," Rebecca said, but her eyes remained predatory. "I studied art history at Yale. Perhaps we know some of the same professors." The conversation continued for several more minutes, with Rebecca asking increasingly specific questions about Victoria's fictional background. By the time they moved away, Victoria felt like she had been through a gentle but thorough interrogation. The dance floor confessed later. As they swayed together on the dance floor, Sebastian pulled Victoria closer. "You handled that beautifully," he murmured against her ear. "Your sister is terrifying," Victoria replied, trying to focus on the conversation instead of how good Sebastian felt in her arms. "Rebecca sees you as a threat," Sebastian explained. "She's been grooming herself to take over more of the company. But if I settle down and start a family, it changes the succession plans." Victoria leaned back to look at him. "So this fake relationship actually threatens her position?" "Potentially, yes, Sebastian. I didn't realize I was walking into a corporate power struggle." Sebastian's hand moved to cup her cheek, the gesture so tender it made Victoria's heart ache. "You're not walking into anything," he said softly. "We're in this together." The song ended, but neither of them moved apart, standing there in Sebastian's arms, surrounded by New York's elite. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't supposed to be real, but it felt more real than anything she had ever experienced. The surprise revelation as the evening progressed, Victoria found herself genuinely enjoying the event. Sebastian introduced her to artists, philanthropists, and business leaders. And she discovered she could hold her own in conversations about art, social causes, and even some business topics. "You're a natural at this," Sebastian told her during a quiet moment. "I'm just being myself," Victoria replied. "Exactly," Sebastian said, his eyes intense. "That's what makes you perfect for this." But as the words left his mouth, Victoria saw something flicker across his face. Something that looked almost like regret. "Sebastian, what's wrong?" Before he could answer, a photographer approached them. "Mr. Kane, could I get a photo of you and your lovely companion for the society pages?" Sebastian's arm tightened around Victoria's waist as they posed for the camera. The flash went off several times, capturing them smiling, looking every inch the perfect couple. "What publication?" Victoria asked the photographer. "New York Social Register, Manhattan Life, several others," the photographer replied cheerfully. "This will be front page news, Mr. Kane's first public relationship in years." After the photographer left, Victoria felt a chill despite the warm ballroom. "Front page news?" she repeated. Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly tired. "I should have warned you. Dating me comes with a certain level of public scrutiny." "How much scrutiny?" "They'll dig into your background, interview your friends, maybe even stake out your apartment building." Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. "Sebastian, my background won't hold up to that kind of investigation. What happens when they discover I lied about my parents? What happens when they find out my father was an alcoholic who abandoned us, and my mother died of cancer with $40,000 in medical debt?" Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but serious. "Then, we'll deal with it together, Victoria. I meant what I said. We're in this together." The late-night truth back at Victoria's apartment. They sat on her small couch, the evening's glamour fading into something more intimate and real. "I need to tell you something," Sebastian said, his voice careful. Victoria's heart clenched. "What?" "My feelings for you, they're not fake anymore." Sebastian met her eyes directly. "Somewhere between the gallery and tonight, this stopped being pretend for me." Victoria felt her world tilt. "Sebastian, I know it complicates everything." He continued. "I know it's not what we agreed to. But I can't pretend anymore that I don't care about you." Victoria stared at him, seeing the vulnerability he usually kept hidden behind his confident facade. "The scary part," she said quietly, "is that it's not pretend for me either." Sebastian's smile was soft and relieved. "Where does that leave us?" "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "Your world is so different from mine. Your family already suspects I don't belong. And if the press discovers the truth about my background," Sebastian moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Victoria, I don't care about any of that. I care about you. The real you, not the version you think you need to be for my family or the press." Victoria wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in. It's easy to say now, but what happens when Rebecca digs up the truth about my parents? What happens when your mother realizes I'm not good enough for the Kane family name? Then they'll have to accept that I'm in love with you anyway, Sebastian said simply. The words hung in the air between them, honest and terrifying. "You love me?" Victoria whispered. "I love you," Sebastian confirmed, his thumb tracing circles. On her palm, "I love your passion for art, your strength, the way you make me remember who I used to be before I became consumed with business. I love that you agreed to this crazy arrangement, not for the money, but because you understood I needed help." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too. That's what makes this so complicated." Sebastian leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. "Maybe complicated is okay. Maybe the best things in life are worth fighting for." The promise and the threat. As Sebastian prepared to leave, Victoria caught his arm. "What happens next?" she asked. "Next, we figure out how to make this real without destroying everything we've built," Sebastian replied. "But Victoria, I need you to trust me. Whatever Rebecca discovers, whatever the press prints, whatever my family says or does, I need you to trust that I'm not going anywhere." Victoria nodded, though fear still gnawed at her stomach. I trust you, she said. Sebastian kissed her goodnight. And Victoria watched from her window as his car disappeared into the New York traffic. But as she got ready for bed, Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that their happiness was borrowed time. People like Sebastian Kane didn't end up with people like her in real life. There were too many obstacles, too many people with too much to lose if their relationship succeeded. As she drifted off to sleep, Victoria tried to hold on to the memory of Sebastian's confession, the way he had looked at her when he said he loved. Her tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of their relationship. But tonight, she could pretend that love was enough to overcome the vast differences between their worlds. The question was whether either of them was strong enough for what came next. Victoria woke to her phone buzzing insistently. Groggily, she reached for it, expecting a good morning text from Sebastian. Instead, she found 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Her blood went cold as she opened. The first message saw the photos from last night. You're prettier than I expected. With shaking hands, Victoria opened her laptop and searched for her name online. The results made her stomach drop. Sebastian Kane's mystery woman revealed read the headline from Manhattan Life. Below, it was a photo from the gala, Sebastian's arm around her waist, both of them smiling. But it was the article text that made Victoria feel sick. Victoria Sterling, 26, struggling artist from Brooklyn, appears to be the woman who has captured billionaire Sebastian Kane's heart. Sources close to the Kane family suggest the relationship is moving quickly, with some speculating about engagement rumors. Victoria's hands trembled as she continued reading. They had found her apartment building, interviewed her neighbors, even tracked down her college roommate. But so far, they hadn't discovered the truth about her parents, or the fake nature of her relationship with Sebastian. Her phone rang, Sebastian's name appearing on the screen. Victoria? Are you okay? His voice was tight with concern. Did you see the articles? She asked. Yes, I'm coming over. The pressure-built Sebastian arrived within 20 minutes, looking harried and angry. He gathered Victoria into his arms the moment she opened the door. I'm so sorry, he said against her hair. Should have prepared you better for this. It's not your fault, Victoria replied, though she felt overwhelmed by the sudden invasion of privacy. Actually, it is, Sebastian said grimly. Because there's more. Victoria pulled back to look at him. More what? My mother has invited you to Sunday dinner. She wants to get to know you better. Victoria felt panic rise in her throat. Sebastian, I can't. What if she asks about my parents? What if Rebecca has already found out the truth? Sebastian cupped her face in his hands. Hey, look at me. Figure this out, together, remember? But before Victoria could respond, her phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Don't answer it, Sebastian advised, but Victoria was already pressing accept. Victoria Sterling. The voice was crisp, professional. Yes. This is Janet Morrison from the New York Post. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your relationship with Sebastian Kane. Victoria's eyes widened in panic. Sebastian took the phone from her hand. Miss Sterling has no comment, he said, firmly, ending the call. But Victoria's phone immediately started ringing again. The family dinner from Hell Sunday dinner at the Kane estate was exactly as intimidating as Victoria had imagined. The dining room could have seated 20 people comfortably, with crystal chandeliers and artwork that probably belonged in museums. Catherine Kane presided over the table like a queen, with Rebecca beside her wearing a smile that reminded Victoria of a shark. Sebastian's father, Harrison Kane, was a quieter man who observed everything but said little. Victoria, dear, Catherine began, as the first course was served. Tell us about your family. Sebastian mentioned they're traveling? Victoria's mouth went dry, but she managed to nod. Yes, my father is doing research in Italy. How wonderful, Rebecca said sweetly. What university is he affiliated with? Victoria had prepared for this question. Columbia, she said, naming a school prestigious enough to satisfy the Kanes, but not so small that Rebecca would know every professor personally. Interesting, Rebecca continued. I have several friends on the Columbia faculty. What's his name? Perhaps they know him. Victoria felt the trap closing. Sterling, obviously. Robert Sterling? Rebecca's smile widened. Robert Sterling. To ask around, Sebastian's hand found Victoria's under the table, squeezing reassuringly. But Victoria could see the calculation in Rebecca's eyes and knew she was already planning her next move. After dinner, while the men were having brandy in the study, Catherine invited Victoria to join her for coffee in the garden. "You seem like a lovely girl," Catherine said as they walked among the roses. "But I have to ask, what are your intentions? With my son?" Victoria was taken aback by the directness of the question. "I care about Sebastian very much." "I'm sure you do," Catherine replied. "But caring and love are different things. And love and suitability are different things entirely." "Mrs. Kane, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking." Catherine stopped, walking and turned to face Victoria directly. "I'm asking if you understand what being with Sebastian really means. The scrutiny, the expectations, the sacrifices you'll be asked to make. I'm asking if you're prepared to give up your little art career to be the kind of wife and mother the Kane family needs." Victoria felt anger flare in her chest. "My art isn't a little career. It's who I am. And that," Catherine said with a cold smile, "is exactly my point." Rebecca's discovery that evening, Sebastian walked Victoria to her apartment, both of them. Quiet after the tense dinner. "Your mother wants me to give up my art," Victoria said as they reached her building. "My mother wants a lot of things she's not going to get," Sebastian replied firmly. "Victoria, promise me you won't let them get in your head. What we have is real, and it's worth fighting for." Victoria wanted to believe him, but doubt was creeping. "In Sebastian, maybe your family is right. Maybe we're too different." "No," Sebastian said, turning her to face him. "Don't let them do this to you. Don't let them make you believe you're not worthy of happiness." Before Victoria could respond, her phone chimed with a text message. Then another. And another. With a sinking feeling, Victoria opened the messages. They were all screenshots of news articles, social media posts, and gossip blog entries. And they all had the same theme. Victoria Sterling's tragic past revealed. Kane's girlfriend's dark family secrets. Truth about Sebastian Kane's mystery. Woman. Victoria's hand shook as she read the articles, as someone had dug up everything. Her father's alcoholism, her mother's death. Their financial struggles, even the fact that Victoria had worked as a waitress to pay for art school. But worse than the invasion of privacy was the tone of the articles. They painted her as a gold digger, who had targeted Sebastian for his money, a woman with nothing to offer but sob stories and ambition. Rebecca, Sebastian said grimly, reading over her shoulder. "How can you be sure? Because this is exactly what she would do. Plant stories, leak information, destroy your reputation so thoroughly that staying with you would damage the Kane family." "Name." Victoria felt tears burn her eyes. "Well, it's working." The ultimatum the next morning. Victoria woke to find Sebastian sitting on her fire escape. She opened the window, and he climbed inside, looking like he hadn't slept. "We need to talk," he said. Victoria's heart sank. "You're ending this." Sebastian looked shocked. "Victoria, I love you. This media circus doesn't change that. But it changes everything else," Victoria said sadly. "Your family will never accept me now. The press has painted me as a fortune hunter. And honestly, Sebastian, maybe they're right. They're not right. Aren't they?" Victoria turned away from him. "I agreed to fake a relationship with you for money. How is that different from what they're saying?" "What?" Sebastian moved to stand behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. "Because what we have now isn't fake. Because you fell in love with me, not my bank account. Because you're the most genuine person I've ever met." Victoria leaned back against his chest, drawing strength from his certainty even as doubt plagued her. "Sebastian, I got a call this morning from the gallery. They're canceling my commission." Sebastian went very still. "What?" "Apparently several major donors threatened to pull their funding if the gallery continued to work with me." "Scandal. Around our relationship is affecting my career. I'll fix this," Sebastian said immediately. "I'll make some calls." "No," Victoria interrupted, turning in his arms. "Don't you see? This is exactly what your family warned me about. I can't have a career and be with you. Your world doesn't allow for that." The choice. Sebastian was quiet. For a long moment, his blue eyes searching her face. "What are you saying?" he asked softly. "I'm saying maybe we should end this before it gets worse. For loving you costs me everything I am." "Victoria, no." Sebastian's voice was rough with emotion. "Don't let them win. Don't let them destroy what we have." They're not destroying it, Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. I am, because I can't be the woman you need me to be. Sebastian pulled her close, and Victoria could feel him. Trembling, you're exactly the woman I need. You're the woman I love. Love isn't enough, Victoria whispered against his chest. Not when it comes with a price this high. The grand gesture 3 days passed without contact between them. Victoria threw herself into her art, painting furiously to silence the voice in her head that told her she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Sebastian, meanwhile, was making his own plans. On Thursday evening, Victoria's doorbell rang. She opened it, expecting to find another reporter, but instead found a young woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Victoria? I'm Emma Chen, Sebastian's assistant. They asked me to give you this. Emma handed Victoria an envelope and a small wrapped package before disappearing down the hallway. Inside the envelope was a single ticket to the Kane Industries annual shareholders meeting, scheduled for the next morning. The note attached simply read, "Trust me, please come. I love you. S." The package contained a simple but elegant black dress and a pair of pearl earrings. The shareholders meeting Victoria almost didn't go. She sat in her apartment for an hour, staring at the ticket and the dress, torn between hope and fear. But something in Sebastian's note, the desperate honesty of it, made her change her mind. The Kane Industries headquarters was buzzing with activity when Victoria arrived. She was escorted to a seat in the back of the auditorium, watching as hundreds of shareholders, board members, and financial journalists filled the space. Sebastian stood at the podium, commanding and confident as always. But Victoria could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set with determination. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sebastian began, "thank you for attending today's meeting. Before we discuss quarterly reports and future projections, I have something personal to share with you." A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was highly unusual for a shareholders meeting. Many of you have read the recent media coverage about my personal life. Some of you have expressed concerns about how my relationship might affect this company and your investments. Victoria's heart pounded as she realized what Sebastian was about to do. "I want to address those concerns directly," Sebastian continued, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. "Victoria Sterling is not a gold digger or a social climber or any of the other things the press has called her. She is an extraordinary woman who has faced more challenges by age 26 than most people face in a lifetime."
Ow.
The room had gone completely silent. She lost both parents by age 22. She put herself through art school while working 3 jobs. She has never asked me for a single thing except the chance to be herself. And she is willing to walk away from our relationship rather than compromise her integrity or damage this company. Victoria felt tears streaming down her face as Sebastian's eyes found hers across the crowded room. "I am in love with Victoria Sterling," Sebastian said, his voice strong and clear. "And I intend to marry her, with or without this company, with or without my family's approval, with or without your support as shareholders." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Board members were on their feet, reporters were scribbling frantically, and the audience was buzzing with shocked conversations. But Sebastian wasn't finished. However, he continued, raising his voice above the commotion. "I believe that Kane Industries is stronger when led by someone who understands what really matters in life. Someone who has learned the value of loyalty, dedication, and fighting for what you believe in. Someone who has been taught these values by a woman who embodies them completely." Sebastian paused, letting his words sink in.
Ow.
"So I'm giving you a choice. Accept Victoria as part of the Kane family and continue to benefit from my leadership of this company, or accept my resignation, effective immediately." The silence that followed was deafening. The response, Harrison Kane was the first to stand. Victoria watched Sebastian's father with held breath, uncertain what he was about to say. "My son," Harrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent auditorium, "has just demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership this company needs. I've shown courage, integrity, and the ability to make difficult decisions under pressure." Harrison's eyes found Victoria in the crowd. "Miss Sterling, would you please join us up here?" On shaking legs, Victoria made her way to the front of the auditorium. Every eye in the room was on her, but all she could see was Sebastian's face, filled with love and hope and determination. Miss Sterling Harrison continued once she reached the podium. My son has just risked everything he's worked for to defend your honor. That tells me something important about both of you. Victoria felt Sebastian's hand slip into hers, giving her strength. It tells me, Harrison went on, that you are exactly the kind of woman this family needs. Someone who inspires such devotion must possess extraordinary character. A board member stood up with respect, Mr. Kane. This is highly irregular. We can't make business decisions based on romantic gestures, can't we? Harrison replied. Sebastian has just shown us that he can make tough choices, stand by his principles, and lead with both his head and his heart. Qualities we want in a CEO. Another board member spoke up. What about the negative publicity? The scandal? Sebastian stepped forward. The scandal will fade. But Victoria's character, her strength, her integrity, those are permanent. Those are the qualities I want by my side as we build Kane Industries' future. The vote what happened next was something Victoria would remember for the rest of her life. One by one, board members stood up. Some to express concerns, others to voice support. The shareholders were equally divided, some worried about public perception. Others impressed by Sebastian's demonstration of leadership, but it was Catherine Kane's voice that ultimately swayed the room. I have watched my son become increasingly distant over the years, she said, standing with dignity in the front row. Focused entirely on business, forgetting what it means to be human. In the past few weeks, I have seen him smile more than he has in years. I have seen him remember what it means to care about something beyond quarterly profits. Catherine's eyes met Victoria's, and Victoria saw something she hadn't expected. Respect. Miss Sterling, Catherine continued, You've given my son something I thought he had lost forever. The ability to fight for what he believes in. For that alone, you have my support. The formal vote, when it came, was closer than Sebastian might have hoped, but decisive enough. The board would support his leadership, and, by extension, his choice of partner, the new beginning later that evening. Victoria and Sebastian sat on her fire escape, looking out over the city lights. The media circus was still raging, but somehow, it seemed less important now. I can't believe you did that, Victoria said, leaning against Sebastian's shoulder. You risked everything. I risked everything to get everything, Sebastian replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. Besides, it worked out. What if it hadn't? What if they had voted against you? Sebastian was quiet for a moment. Then I would have started over. Built something new. With you. Victoria turned to look at him. You really mean that? I really mean that, Sebastian confirmed. Victoria, money can be replaced. Companies can be rebuilt. But what we have, this is once in a lifetime. Victoria felt the last of her doubts melt away. So what happens now? Sebastian smiled, reaching into his jacket pocket. Now I ask you properly. Victoria's breath caught as Sebastian pulled out a small velvet box. Victoria Sterling, he said, sliding off the fire escape to kneel on her tiny balcony. Will you marry me? Not for business, not for show, but because I love you more than I ever thought possible. The ring was beautiful, but not ostentatious. A classic solitaire that caught the city lights perfectly. Yes, Victoria whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. As Sebastian slipped the ring onto her finger, Victoria realized that fairy tales didn't always look the way you expected them to. Sometimes they started with spilled champagne and fake relationships and family drama that belonged in a soap opera. But sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave, they ended with two people who had learned that love really was worth fighting for. The epilogue 1 year later, Victoria stood in the garden of the Kane estate, surrounded by white roses and fairy lights. Her wedding dress was simple but elegant, designed by a friend from art school who had insisted on creating it as a wedding gift. Sebastian waited for her at the altar, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, and looking at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. As Victoria walked down the aisle, she passed faces that had become dear to her over the past year. Catherine Kane, who had become an unexpected ally and friend. Harrison Kane, who had quietly commissioned 3 paintings from Victoria for his private office. Even Rebecca, who had eventually admitted that Victoria made Sebastian happy in a way that was impossible to fake. But it was Sebastian's face that held her attention. Sebastian, who had kept his promise to support her art career, who had celebrated. every gallery showing and commissioned with genuine pride. Sebastian, who had proven that love could indeed conquer the vast differences between their worlds. As they exchanged vows, Victoria thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. Spilled champagne, the fake relationship, the media scandal, the shareholders' meeting where Sebastian had risked everything for love. "I promise," Sebastian said, his voice clear and strong, "to love you exactly as you are, to support your dreams, and to never ask you to be anyone other than the extraordinary woman who stole my heart at an art gallery." "I promise," Victoria replied, her voice steady despite her tears. "To love you through scandal and success, to believe in us even when the world doesn't, and to never stop fighting for what we have." When Sebastian kissed her, sealing their marriage, Victoria could hear the camera shutters clicking, could see the society photographers capturing the moment for tomorrow's papers. But this time, she didn't care about the headlines or the scrutiny or the whispered conversations. This time, she was exactly where she belonged, in the arms of the man who loved her enough to risk everything. And as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Victoria knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. After all, they had already proven that sometimes the most impossible love stories turn out to be the most real ones of all. The girl from Brooklyn has gotten her fairy tale ending, not because she had changed to fit into his world, but because he had been willing to build a new world that had room for both of them. And they lived happily, messily, beautifully ever after.